Good evening and welcome to This Week in Review. Tonight's stories include visit to the greenhouse site, CO video, see Cadet annual speak-off. These stories plus community events, the BBS Playbill, Off the Rack and more coming up after this.
Participaction wants you to know excess weight is a serious health risk. Sandra has fought the weight battle.
All my life I did the yo-yo thing, really.
Today, she's succeeding with a winning formula.
Keep on your diet, do your exercise program, and be easy on yourself.
Dr. David Lau.
Physical activity has tremendous payoffs. The self-confidence, improved longevity.
It's like a freedom for me.
Take your first step with Participaction.
On Monday of this week, we visited the greenhouse site. The original house is being made ready for the upcoming planting season, which is expected to start early in February. The workers were busy leveling the floor of the house and rebuilding the growing benches. Most of the wiring has been complete. Leonard Porter, one of the owner-operators, told us that this project is just a little ahead of schedule. He went on to say that this is mostly due to the hard work and dedication of the workers. All the plants will be planted in the original house, and when they are about 1 month old, they will be transferred to the new house. Work on the new house is progressing nicely as well. We spoke to Leonard Porter about the new house. Now, Leonard, what we're looking at here now are what you call the bays, right?
Yep.
And you said you had 4 production bays?
4 bays for growing and 1 bay is for office space, washrooms, cold storage, packing room, that sort of thing.
Okay. Now you were saying something very interesting about the reinforcements. Do you want to just tell us about that again?
Yeah, what we've got going across the end of the wall is a 3x5 channel beam, steel channel beam. That's using Hangle spans to the main inside beams, and this is what our plants will be attached to, but there's also wind support. Because if we're in Burgeo areas, a fairly high wind situation here, so this is all wind bracing. It's all steel.
Okay, and the posts that are like that distinguish the bays, they you said are anchored into the.
This also supports roof supports, and they're gone directly to the bedrock and surrounded by concrete. Some of them are 25 feet deep.
Okay. And then again, that's to anchor the greenhouse.
That's to anchor the greenhouse.
Okay. Now the roof you said is made out of a slightly different material than the original one.
Well, it's basically the same thing. It's a 6 mil Durafilm.
Okay.
2 layers, and it's inflated.
Okay.
It's sealed along the sides with a system called a polylock system, and the inflators are installed very similar to a blower motor on a oil stove. Okay. And you just blow the air between the 2 layers of plastic and inflate it.
Yeah.
It also gives it some structural integrity.
Okay. Now the fans at the end that would be work the same as in the original house?
Yeah, exactly the same purpose.
Okay.
It's a ventilation system. When the fans start, the tailgates in this end open automatically, so you're pulling air right through the house, keeping it ventilated, especially on hot summer days.
Okay. Now, right now your greenhouse floor is covered with mostly snow. I believe you said you were going to hook up some temporary furnaces?
Yeah, we've got to install a couple of temporary furnaces, mostly for the sake of if we get a ice storm or something, we need some heat in there to keep the ice melted off of the building. But it will melt snow a little faster, so we can proceed with the floor leveling and get ready for the plants, which we're hoping to be doing in the early part of next month.
Yeah, we just came from you, the original house, and Linda and Flora are out there putting the growing benches, I believe you said they were called,
they're
right?
building the grow bench. They're reassembling them.
They're reassembling them.
It's the same
that's
ones we had before.
Yeah.
They were taken apart and moved down to this site, and they're putting them back together and getting ready for planting that house.
Yeah. Time soon, I guess.
We're hoping to be planted within another couple of weeks.
Yeah. Okay. So what else do you have to do, like on the inside, besides the obvious, like we got snow on the ground? But what other things do we have to do now to get ready for the season?
We got to install the grow benches, which is the same system we used in the other house. Then we have string support wires for the plants, and then each plant has to have its own support string.
Okay, yeah.
And then we have to install the irrigation system. There's going to be something like 3,000 drip tubes. It's all going to be installed here.
Okay.
This was, we're looking at roughly 3,000 plants.
Yeah, okay. The project that the workers are working on now, though, is that for just, is that an EI booster under that program?
No, it's just it's a JCP
Okay, okay.
project.
Yeah. So they got so many weeks work, do
Yeah,
they?
they're going to be finishing on the 8th of next month.
Okay. Wow. So Leonard, did you want to describe how how each roof is connected?
Well, there's a polylock channel. It runs down each side of the gutters. Gutters are these aluminum things you see sticking out through the hinge there.
Yeah.
So double layer of plastic is pulled down over that, and that's a channel. And there's a piece of what's called polylock.
Okay.
It snaps in there and in the grooves and locks everything in place.
Okay.
What the boys are doing now is they're adding a couple extra sheet or soft tapper screws
Okay.
to make sure that these can't pop out in the wind.
Okay.
'Cause that's basically what's holding all this plastic to the main steel frame.
The gutters too are used to for draining water and stuff,
Yep,
isn't
that's
it?
the idea. The gutters are, as the rain or the snow lands on these roofs, it runs down over into the gutters and then out the hinge. Now we've got to add some more to the gutter so it's just not falling down at the end of the building, so we can run it into the drainage ditch.
Okay. That was the big ditch that you had dug there right at the
Yep.
beginning, right? Okay. Wow. You really get an appreciation for the size of this thing now.
Yeah, it's 120 by 105.
Now you do have room to expand if that's what you want to do later on.
Yeah, we can add another bay. Each one of these roofs is considered a bay. We can add another bay to each side of it.
Okay, so that will be on that end and on this end over here. Okay, yeah. Yeah, and that's the original house down there. Being prepared for the start of the growing season. What about your groundwork now? Have you got all your outside groundwork done, or is when spring comes you have to do more?
We'll probably do some landscaping and that sort of thing in spring. What the boys are doing there now is they're burying electrical cables, tick cables.
Okay, okay, yeah. Well, we certainly thank you for talking to us today, Leonard, and as it goes on, I'm sure we'll be back again.
Yeah, you come back anytime at all.
Thanks a million. On Tuesday of this week, we had a number of phone calls about seals in the Reach area. 3 seals were located directly across from the fish plant. One of our callers jokingly said that the seals had heard Burgeo was getting a seal tannery and that they wanted to be the first clients to go through. The seals, however, must have had second thoughts because they left the scene later in the day. Thanks to the people who informed us about the seals' visit. On Thursday of this week, the Sea Cadets held their annual Speak-Off. CO Jeff Quelty got the evening underway by welcoming everyone and telling a little about the Speak-Off.
Cadets, parents, guests, and judges, good evening. I'm Lieutenant Jeff Quelty, commanding officer, and I welcome you to the local phase of Speak-Off 2002. Speak-Off 2002 is this year's running of the annual Newfoundland and Labrador Cadet Public Speaking Championship. In previous years, only one cadet could go to the provincial. This year, however, we have two categories. The first being the senior category for cadets aged 16 to 18 years, and a junior category for cadets aged 12 to 15. A representative from each category will advance to the provincial competition in St. John's on the 16th of February, with all expenses paid. This year's cadets were given 3 topics to choose from. Number 1, Canada, a nation of peacekeepers. Topic number 2, how September the 11th, 2001 has affected me. And finally, I'm proud to be a Sea Cadet. The focus of the speech may be broad and may include fictional, historical, symbolic, or humorous features. An independent panel of 3 will judge them, 50% on content and 50% on delivery. A detailed score sheet has been provided to each of them, and the judges are, to my far left, Jody James, she's a fisheries officer, Wendy Rose, lab tech, and someone you all know, Mr. Scott Linehan, the principal of the high school. After the speeches are complete, the judges will retire to choose the winner, and the judges will elect the person to speak on their behalf and deliver the verdict. We'll start with the senior category and have Petty Officer First Class Melanie Durnford speak. Since there were no other competitors in this category, she will automatically advance. Congratulations, Melanie. Now, please sit back, listen, and enjoy as some of our finest cadets speak up. Thank you.
A date which shall live in infamy. The United States of America, democracy, and the free world was suddenly and deliberately attacked. You may think that these words were spoken by President George Bush, but you would be off by 61 years. Good evening, judges, officers, fellow speakers, cadets, and guests. The topic I have chosen to speak on is how September 11th, 2001 has affected me. Going back to 1941, the year Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, President Franklin Roosevelt shared these words with the world. The attack on Pearl Harbor was intended as a shock to leave Americans too stunned to carry on a serious war. Instead, it united their will as never before, and so have the events of the past few months. On September 11th, terrorists attacked freedom. America's blessed sense of invulnerability died that day, along with thousands of citizens. 2 hijacked planes struck the World Trade Center towers, another struck the Pentagon, and 1 crashed in a field near Pennsylvania. This has been the worst single terrorist attack in the world. I can clearly remember watching it on television that day. Peering into the living room, I saw what seemed to be a movie, until reality hit. Live. This was live. Everyone in the streets looked to be standing still, riveted to the scene, some shaking and uttering words of disbelief, others staring in silence. We venture words to capture the magnitude. Pearl Harbor, apocalypse, Armageddon. We try to make sense of untold thousands of innocent injured and dead. The tragedy is closer to home than we realize. Karina Bryan, a native of St. John's, Newfoundland, was supposed to have moved into one of the World Trade Center towers, but another department in her company got shifted instead. They would have been on the 18th floor. but there have been thousands that haven't been so lucky. Parents lost children. Children lost parents. When I think about it, it tears me up inside. I feel overwhelmed with sorrow, and my heart goes out to these people. What could cause people to wreak such havoc and kill so carelessly? It's even more horrific than we can imagine.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, parents, judges, and fellow cadets. My name is Cadet Officer 2nd Class Victor Benwalk, and tonight I'm going to tell you why I'm so proud to be a Sea Cadet. Since I've been a toddler, I've always been fascinated with the Sea Cadets. I still remember climbing on a chair near my kitchen window to watch the Sea Cadets marching by. The flags waving high in the air, the drums beating, and those uniformed people all marching to the same beat. I even enjoyed pretending to be a cadet as I beat my own drum and marched around my house. Now that I'm older, I've come to realize that cadets is so much more than young people marching through town on Remembrance Day and the many other special events throughout the year. It is the largest federally sponsored youth program in Canada, designed for Canadians between the ages of 12 to 18, with the sole aim of developing the attributes of good citizenship and leadership, promoting physical fitness, and stimulating the interest of youth in naval activities. The cadet program, which is sponsored by a number of outstanding organizations, such as the Canadian Forces, the Navy, Army, and Air Leagues of Canada, and the Department of National Defence. It provides opportunities for every Canadian youth between the ages of 12 and 18, regardless of social economic status, race, or religion. Because the uniforms, training programs, and travel opportunities are all free. Many people think that cadets is a preparation for a career in the military. Not so. It is really about preparing for life and developing skills, qualities, and confidence to allow us to prosper and contribute to the Canada of tomorrow.
Good evening, everyone. I am Able Cadet Monica Patrick. The topic I have chosen to do my speech on tonight is how September 11th, 2001 has affected me. I remember coming home for lunch, thinking that it was just another ordinary day. I walked into the kitchen, and the first thing that I noticed was that my lunch wasn't prepared, which it usually is. My mom was on the couch, her eyes glued to the television. My first impression was that she was really into a Bruce Willis action-packed movie, very graphic, with a plane exploding into a very tall building, and people screaming and running everywhere, terrified. Reporters are pointing their cameras skyward, capturing yet another plane flying into a second building. People are frantically jumping out of the buildings. Fire and smoke are bellowing across the sky. Thousands of people are trapped inside as the buildings collapse. People are crying. Firefighters are rushing in, trying to save as many lives as possible. The death toll is rapidly nearing 10,000. Then I noticed something. Something that sends a chill down my spine. Something that made all the difference in the world. Just one little word in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. Live. Some people may not think that a location such as Newfoundland could have anything to do with the tragedy that occurred on September 11th. But even though they do not have tall buildings and bustling streets, the events that took place on that dreadful day had a greater impact than what most people would expect. After the first day, I continued to watch news reports, seeing the shocking clip of the World Trade Center collapsing onto the screen a countless number of times. And the news flashes were everywhere. Attack on America. The fear built up inside of me. Only that fear soon turned to anger. Personally, I cannot see how someone, such as Bin Laden, can hate someone or something so much that he has to kill thousands upon thousands of innocent victims who have families and friends who love them, only to feel justified for his country.
Is this the beginning terrorists from Afghanistan launched a deadly attack not only on the World Trade Centers and the Pentagon, but on the whole United States. One hijacked plane, destined for what they think was the White House, was taken over by passengers and crashed in the field in Pennsylvania, killing everyone on board. The Twin Towers felt like children's building blocks in the streets of the Big Apple below. Osama bin Laden vowed to make the Americans' lives invisible when he attacked. When I came home on that terrible day, I turned on the TV and saw those terrible images. Over 2,600 people were presumed dead and countless others were injured. I was appalled and I felt sick. Tears started to fall from my eyes. The darkness, the sadness, the anger. While people were running to save their lives, other people like brave police officers and firefighters were running towards the building to save other people's lives. When I saw this on television, I was worried. Questions were running through my mind. Questions such as, what if the terrorists attack the big city in Canada next? Or what if World War III starts? Stuff like this cannot be ignored. I hate to watch people die, so on that terrible day I cried for almost 2 hours. They must have felt so helpless and hopeless. I knew how upset I would be if my parents were missing or possibly dead. The searchers had little hope of finding anyone alive after 1 week, but they kept trying. Some searchers found a kitten in an air pocket that survived only on 1 puddle of water.
Osama bin Laden following in Hitler's footsteps? Why is he attacking Canada's neighboring country, the United States of America? Is this the start of another war? These are the questions that race through my mind. Good evening, fellow Sea Cadets, commanding officers, parents, and invited guests. My name is O.C. Sonia Anderson of 157 Bob Bartlett Sea Cadet Corps, and I would like to tell you how the terrorist bombing on September 11, 2001 has affected me. On that day, now referred to as 9/11, Osama bin Laden and his band of terrorists attacked the freedom of our free world. He done this by sending planes to crash into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City, one into the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and another into a field southeast of Pittsburgh, killing all those on board. When the first plane had crashed into one of the towers, it was thought that it had been a horrible accident. Then, about half an hour later, another plane had crashed into the second tower. It was then known that it was not an accident, but an act of terrorism. The whole world was in total shock and disbelief. How could this be happening? Why is it happening? People were glued to their television sets, watching as the events unfolded before them. Then, another great travesty happened. Then the Twin Towers began to collapse, killing more and more people. Nearly 3,000 people died that day. These events has had a profound effect on me and those around me. I watched as people sat and cried because they were horrified and saddened because of the deaths of so many people.
Panels to decide on a runner-up and first place winner. So, the runner-up tonight for the Speak Up in the junior category, ages 12 to 15, who spoke on September 11th. The runner-up winner this evening was Monica Patrick. And finally, tonight's winner, who overall as a whole encompassing package spoke well, clearly articulated the
points that we need to know, very well rehearsed and well said. So again, in the junior category from 12 to 15, tonight's winner and traveling on to St. John's to represent your corps in this area, and the best of luck to you, is Victor Belmont. Thank you to all our...
The Speak-Off will be shown in its entirety at a later date. Stay tuned for more of This Week in Review coming up after this.
Participaction wants you to know excess weight is a serious health risk. Dr. David Lau.
The more overweight you are, the more likely your lifespan is shortened.
These people have never met each other, yet they share a common challenge.
You start going through the dieting game, and I would lose weight, gain weight, lose weight, gain weight.
I can't pass a pastry display without, oh geez, I'd love to have one of those.
Excess weight contributes to heart disease, diabetes, and high blood pressure. Sandra and Dave are succeeding by reducing their weight.
So we think more about if we want to enjoy the next 20 years, what is it that we have to do?
They're taking the first steps, getting active, making healthy food choices, and talking to their doctor.
We do live longer if we engage in regular physical activity.
It's like a freedom for me. When you feel good about yourself, everything in your life seems better. Probably it's the greatest benefit of all.
Take your first step with Participaction.
On Tuesday of this week, Greg Hilliard dropped by our studio with the monthly BDDB report. Today in our studio we have with us Greg Hilliard, and Greg is going to be doing his monthly report. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks for having me again. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's always good to have you. You keep us up to date on what's going on. We'll start with the BDDB brochure.
Yeah, as people probably recall, the last year and a half, the board, in partnership with other communities and town council, of course, managed to acquire funds for display units, and we attended a number of different trade shows and conventions promoting the whole South Coast region and of course our different businesses and that. And it was really felt at some point in time that there was a void in that our board, BDDB, doesn't have any promotional materials. So we felt that, at our attendance at all these different events, it would be nice that if we did up a promotional brochure and had it there available, because people really don't tie in the development board and the things and the initiatives that they're undertaking and really what the role and responsibility and the mandate of the board is. So at our last meeting, we reviewed a number of different brochures actually that were developed about a year and a half ago by the enterprise class at the high school. And I must say the students at that time did a fantastic job, but it seemed like priorities took precedence and we never really did get around to it. So at our last meeting they reviewed them and we made a selection, and hopefully in the next few months we'll actually get a proper brochure printed up, and not only to promote, I guess, the board and its activities and what its mandate is throughout different regions of the province, but also for the local within the community, because you'd be surprised at the amount of people that look at the board as well. They're there just to administer short-term projects, and in reality, I mean, our board has a much broader mandate, and especially as it relates to long-term sustainable economic development within the community. So hopefully it'll be an education and promotional process within the community as well as within the whole of the region.
Oh, very good. Subcommittees.
Yeah, there's been some discussion over, I guess, the board members taking a little bit more ownership of some of the major initiatives and other activities that the BDDB is involved in. We do have our, monthly meetings, which are regularly scheduled, and of course we do have special meetings related to different aspects of what might come up from time to time that would require the board to get together. About 2 years ago, we tried to initiate subcommittees, whereby a member of the board would take on a certain initiative or a certain aspect in terms of our development, and then they would invite other individuals that are not on the board from within the community to come sit down, and whether it be, for example, in relationship to aquaculture development, in relationship to short-term projects or other initiatives that we might have ongoing as a whole. Okay. Obviously, when we talk about subcommittees, we would not, for example, get involved with developing subcommittees for things like the greenhouse development, because it really is a business enterprise in the same way with the sea urchin. So But our whole intent is really to engage board members and make them, or not make them, but have them more actively involved in how the process works in terms of moving some of these things forward, because sometimes it gets to be a situation where as staff we kind of run with it, and then we report once a month on what's happening, and some board members have questions which we have no problems, of course, filling in details, but it was felt that they would be take a little bit more ownership and be a little bit more involved and be around the table when some of these things are happening, so they get a different perspective. It's not just as simple as saying we're going to do something. And prime example is the sea urchin development. I mean, it's been all over 2 years right now, and you know, I said to somebody one time, you know, it's going to take us 2.5 to 3 years to get this thing moving, believe it or not, and that's just the way the process works, unfortunately, even as frustrated as we get. So it's a feeling of everybody by having board members here. They'll be more and better informed and be able to see what processes are actually taking place to try and just take one small initiative, albeit if you look at it provincially as a whole, and try to bring that to fruition within the community. So we're hoping that within the next month or two we'll be identifying the subcommittee sectors, and then of course it'll be up to the board members to determine where their areas of interest are or where they would like to sit in terms of being involved on these different subcommittees. And of course, having said that, there'll also be representatives. For example, we have a greenhouse management team. There'll be a management team for the sea urchin development, so we will have a board representative that'll sit around with those, sit around the table when we have those management meetings, and they'll be involved in the overall process. So it's very exciting. It's something, again, that we tried a couple of years ago, and it seemed with everything going on, we kind of got away from it a little bit. And of course, people's time is valuable. I mean, they are volunteers as well, and we have to be a little bit cognizant of those aspects, that, you know, people can't spread themselves too thin. But I think if it works, it'll be a process where maybe somebody will have to dictate maybe 2 or 3 or maybe 4 additional hours per month, you know, volunteering in that aspect, which won't be too bad for anybody, so to speak. So again, it's an ownership thing to make the board, you know, more involved, or to get the board more involved, and to get them to look at the processes and assist with, obviously, the decision making. We just don't want somebody to sit around the table and say, okay, I'm informed. It gives them as individuals now the opportunity to be involved in a very direct way.
So it probably gives them a better understanding how the BDDB operates.
Yeah, how the overall process operates. You know, I mean, we all know what the mandate and what the board's there for, to implement, you know, community strategic plan.
Yeah, but actually,
now, how we get there from A to Z.
That's right.
Is sometimes, and of course, when you're running from A to P might be okay, and then all of a sudden you run off from 1 to 20, and then you come back to
exactly,
you know, Q type of thing, and you get back on the road again. If you know what I mean. There's always deviations, and this way it'll certainly bring the board or make them more informed of how things flow, and sometimes the different things that the hurdles that we've got to go through just to move something forward. Because sometimes it looks so simple as, well, why can't we do this? Well, we can, but by the time you finish dealing with a whole process, it gets to be cumbersome sometimes.
That's right, yeah.
And I think it'll be helpful for the board as a whole.
Yeah, well, it certainly sounds interesting.
Yeah. It gives us a staff too, as another resource person. I mean, we do, when we come to our monthly meetings, I mean, like our last meeting, I mean, it was 3.5 hours long. There's only so much you can absorb, and when you sit there and give information, you're waiting for feedback. It's kind of difficult sometimes because there's so much going on, and how can you know, it's not too many people can really stand up and think, kind of just bang, 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 and say, well, this is what we should do.
That's right.
You know, a lot of people need a little bit of time, and that's normal. So this process hopefully will work, and you know, I think it'll engage the board a little bit more, and not that they haven't, nobody said that they weren't informed and that kind of stuff, but it certainly it'll take
give them another advantage.
Exactly.
Give them another advantage, Okay, now your Ring practices for your short-term projects.
Yeah, as you're well aware, and of course the residents of the community, we did acquire funding under the municipal emergency response programs through our MHA to employ a number of people in a number of projects in the community. And over the course of the last month or two, we've certainly had some concerns really this time around brought to light. We've always heard concerns in regards to short-term projects, but nothing of this nature. You usually get a couple of calls and that kind of stuff. And of course, I've always encouraged people that if they have problems or concerns in regards to the hiring practices and things that are done, you know, to write us. And if they've got suggestions on how they feel a better way to do it to make it fair, or from their perspective it doesn't seem fair, then the board would always be receptive to it. So at our last meeting, of course, there was one individual in the community that did write, and I had another individual that actually dropped in to see me in regards to the situation, and of course it was dealt with at our board meeting. The problem that we've run into now is a situation whereby there's if you want, a black hole, I'll call it, for lack of a better term, in that people that have never gotten on a project and the people that need 910 hours to be eligible do not fit into any of the criteria. They're kind of left out away from the fold. And unfortunately, the way it appears now is that he'll pretty well never have the opportunity to get on a project.
Okay.
And it's just if we look at the criteria, for example, the last projects we had, provincial government came down, they said it must be this, that automatically anybody that needed 910 hours to be EI eligible were just gone. When we get projects in relationship to JCP, for example, I mean, these are short-term, people need to be attached, EI attached. These people have been out of the system for so long now, they're not attached anymore, and they still need 910 hours. And therefore, again, we have to, they get put to one side. And it's all based on criteria. So, at our last meeting we discussed it, and this is nothing, centralized at Burgeo. I was in Ramia last week for a meeting with the development board over there. Same scenario, same situation. I talked to counterparts in Port aux Basques, the Coast of Bays and Harbour Breton, and in other places around Newfoundland. It's the same situation that everybody's coming up with right now. There is a segment of the population that no matter how you cut it, you can't do anything for them. And in terms of our board, of course, one of the things that we discussed at the meeting was possibly changing our policy so these people with 910 would actually take precedent over people that need 420 or less. However, then the board went back to say, well, if we do that, then okay, we help one individual, but what about the 2 or 3 individuals that could get helped in the other program? So it becomes a numbers game again of how many people can you help with the least amount of dollars that you have available. And of course, when we look at the criteria and mandates that we receive in some of this funding, I mean, they want us to get as many people eligible as possible. So we have to fall in their criteria as well. We don't know what the answer is. I mean, we know that there's a group of people out there. We know right now there's no way that at this point in time that we can assist them in any way, shape, or form, requiring that 910 hours. And I mean, again, I'll put it out to people in the community, if they have some ways and means that we might be able to do something to get a balance, because let's face it, I guess it's a situation where it's a catch-22. If you help somebody that needs 910 hours, then the people that need less than 420 or 420 are going to come banging at your door as well and saying, look, I've kind of done this, and this, how come I can't get involved? And then you go back the other way. So no matter how you try and cut it, you're really not going to satisfy everybody. One thing I will say to everybody in the community is that we have, again, and I mentioned it before, this hiring policy in place, albeit it might seem fair, but it's certainly, and the board noted that the other night, is the way that's being done now with the hiring is a lot more fair and equitable to everybody in the community versus the different things that have gone on previously. And it's just one of those things where, we can't be accused of discrimination or picking names out of a hat or not picking names out of a hat or having somebody on a blacklist, because that's not the way it is. I mean, the way this policy reads is pretty straightforward and anybody can read it. It's very plain. And the unfortunate thing, though, we know with the policy we have and in the guidelines that are available that group of people need 910 hours are really left in a lurch. And we don't know how to resolve it. I got to be quite honest with you, without affecting somebody else again, and trying to be fair to everybody, I guess, at the end of the day. And how do you resolve it? We've had our go-arounds with HRDC in terms of trying to get insurable earnings and that to get people EI eligible. HRDC won't even touch it. Province again has come out recently with another emergency response program. Not the right time of year to be doing it. So, how do you deal with all these things that come up, right? And then the board gets to the point, and it was mentioned the other night, what are we here for? Are we here to look at long-term sustainable development for the community, or are we responsible for these short-term projects that just get people EI eligible and in 12 months' time they're going to be back at your door again? My philosophy behind it is those short-term projects provide us with the opportunity to do community enhancement activities, which otherwise we wouldn't. And we do provide benefit to a number of people in the community. So if we just say, forget it, we're not going to touch it anymore, then there's a number of negatives that come with that. So, you weigh out the negatives and the positives, and just because you don't want to deal, let's say, with some of the negative aspects, then all of a sudden it's all going to be negative, because you won't be able to provide any enhancement activities, you won't be able to assist certain people, and, albeit you can't be everything to everybody, but if you can help a few people at a time, then, and help the community and enhance the community at the same
That's
time. I
right.
mean, that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
And the board really feels bad about that group of people that are there, but I mean, the answer, what's the answer? I mean, you know, it really all started, I guess, and not pointing no fingers at anybody, with the post-tags, whereby everybody was under the impression that everybody would be equal and everybody would have the opportunity to get on a project. And of course, somewhere along the line, somebody decided, sorry, the funds are all gone. And the board's well aware, you know, there was 90+ people that never did get on a project in the community. And really, even though it's reflected in the board only were given so much money and could do with what they could with what they had.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, at the end of the day, that's where it fell out. And I don't think it was a situation where certain people were put on a wall saying, we'll make sure this person don't get anything or that person. It's to my
Comes down
knowledge.
to numbers. Well, basically it comes down to numbers and the amount of dollars you got to get the most people working.
Exactly, and the
Yeah.
criteria
Yeah.
that we have to work within, albeit our own policy that we have, or albeit the criteria that different agencies provide us with when they give us dollars. There's always
Okay.
certain, I wouldn't say strings attached, but certain criteria that you have to follow in order to be able to access that funding, and that's where we're to, you know. And again, at the end of the day, we don't know what the answer is. I mean, the board says, you know, albeit you're always going to have problems with short-term projects because
Yeah.
you're never going to be able to satisfy anybody. The only thing I will say is that at the end of the day, with the emergency response funding, we did anybody that fit the criteria managed to get on a program. But unfortunately, again, there was that segment of people that needed 910 that automatically, before we looked at anything else, they needed 910 hours. We couldn't assist them.
They didn't qualify.
Didn't qualify. And unfortunately, that's what we have to do at this point in time. So I guess I will put it out to the community. I mean, if you know, we have a policy in place, the board's always said, and we've said as staff, we're always receptive. If somebody has a better way or a different idea how we can handle the situation, then by all means, I mean, put it in writing. And again, it'll go back to the board for review and consideration, and you know, and see what can be done to work it out for everybody. But right now, I guess I just want people in the community to know that the board is sensitive to the situation, you know, what's happening out there. And unfortunately, in some ways, in a lot of ways, their hands are tied, and we've got to deal with things as they go forward.
Yeah. That's what you said. That's the unfortunate thing about short-term projects. There's always some people that kind of fall through the cracks. Our sea urchin development, how's things going with that?
Yeah, it kind of, I won't say went off the rails, but we ran into a little bit of a situation whereby the different agencies are definitely on side and agree that this has major potential, not only within the community, and I think I mentioned the last time we talked about it that right now we're working with 3 other zone boards who are doing resource identification programs, and of course we have understandings with them that if in fact they identify a substantial resource in those regions, that they would actually look at Burgeo as the processing facility of record, and that makes our operation that much more viable at the end of the day if we can bring all this resource from different areas of the West Coast down to Burgeo for primary processing and go from there. It's certainly more than attractive. There was a situation where, of course, in the different agencies, federal agencies' review of our business plan and whatnot, it was discovered that there is a policy in place in terms of assisting primary processing operations. So we've had to go back around the table. We've had numerous discussions, and as a matter of fact, I met with major representatives of ACOA last week to review it, and we are taking a somewhat different approach as opposed to our original approach. So I think it's back on stream. The regional director for ACOA will be making a presentation to DFO and DFA in regards to this whole situation. So we're still very confident that it's going to move forward, albeit it's going to be a little bit behind time. If people recall, I think sometime in November, December, I mentioned we were hoping to get the process moving by the end of January. We're still shooting, obviously, to have an opening date of October 1 when the season opens. It looks like right now, as we review everything, it'll probably be the latter part of February, early part of March before we actually see some major activity happening in that area. On a very positive note, our application to Human Resource Development for financial assistance has been approved in principle. So that's somewhat over $100,000, which is roughly 1/4 of the funding we're looking for. And of course, their funding is based on approval from the other agencies as well. So I mean, we're step one of three steps, and I still have every confidence that this will definitely move forward. I think everybody's aware that it's not only going to create sustainable seasonal employment on land, but I mean, you're talking about harvesters and divers in the water and the spin-off jobs that can be created from that. And as we all know, in regards to the existing fishery along the south coast, the harvesters are getting hit again and again, and they're going to have to look for other species. And this is certainly one area which has become a priority in the province to look at. It has certainly sustainability as far as we're concerned, and economic viability. So we're certainly moving it forward from that perspective, and I think the agencies are very cognizant of that. And I did remind them last week when I was in that they've footed somewhere around $50,000 for us to find out what we have here. They know what we have here, we know what we have here, and it'd be an awful crime just to leave it there and not having the opportunity to see if this thing can work to its fullest extent. And I also remind them that they are, through our assistance and support and whatnot, providing funding for resource programs to be done in other regions of the Western Newfoundland. So why bother doing those if all you're going to do is find out what's there, and in reality nothing's going to get done with it? Because we've already proven that it's not economically viable to take whole urchins from the west coast of Newfoundland and try and transport them to a processing facility in the east coast of Newfoundland. Number one, you lose quality, and number two, the cost of doing it. The harvesters wouldn't make any money whatsoever. They'd be actually diving just to feed another plant and not really get anything worthwhile out of it themselves. So why would they even bother? So I think everybody is really cognizant of those areas there, and of course, you know, again, it's a new resource, a new identifiable resource, and we have every confidence that it will move forward at the end of the day, and I've kind of left it to the powers to be to try and work through their own policies and their own system in that regard. But I think within the next few weeks we'll hear something very, very positive.
Good. At least it's not a dead issue.
Not at all.
Our CO tannery. Now, during the week, last week I believe it was, that there was a meeting in St. John's with all the government officials in the company, and I believe you are a member of the committee dealing with the CO tannery. Who else will be sitting on that committee besides you?
Well, you have, if everybody recalls, obviously this thing all came about as what happened in November, early December, and of course we have George Reed is actually the chairperson of that committee. Owen Marsden sits on it, myself, and Dave McDonald was involved. John Grant, who's the chair of the BDDB, was involved as well. And of course, as everybody knows, the history, we went in to see Mr. Barry, and he put a major initiative of the tannery on the table. So last Wednesday, Jerry Reid, the Minister of Fisheries, Calvin Parsons, our MHA, Minister of Justice, and representative from Carino, which is a Norwegian company that's actually doing the initial processing, if you want, in Dildo, and then shipping it to Norway for final processing to the garment stage, was in on the meeting. And of course Bill Barry from Seafreeze, who was involved with the tannery in Catalina, was there, and there was only 4 individuals. They had a very frank, from my understanding, they had a very frank and open discussion, and at the end of the day both companies were asked to go back respectively and gather more information in terms of the overall picture of the seal tannery industry in Newfoundland and Labrador from their perspective. And right now a tentative date has not been set, but from my understanding, once the information is gathered, they're both supposed to get back to Mr. Byrne, who's by and large chairing this, obviously it's within his department of jurisdiction, get back to the minister, and then he will set another time that each party will meet with the minister and move forward, hopefully at the end of the day. I know from discussions with our MHA's office, he was in Catalina yesterday, or earlier this week I should say, and to view it with representatives of DFA. So they are still, moving forward, the department's still moving forward in terms of investigating and finding out exactly, how the process works and what the industry requires, which to me is a very positive step. They just didn't leave the meeting, and nothing's happening at this point in time. Where it goes from here and the time frames, I don't know. I mean, the seal fishery is supposed to open up within the next couple of months, and we can only hope that at the end of the day, something positive will come down, and I think it will. I think government saw this, and everybody saw this as an opportunity, and I would not be negative on it. I think the process that they go through is just normal sometimes, where we have 2 industry people involved in it. Obviously, they're business people. They're looking after their own vested interest first, which is normal. I mean, that's how things operate. And of course, they got to go back to the table and just determine what's going to benefit our company as a whole. At the end of the day, I will say, from my understanding, Mr. Barry is still very very interested and very receptive to doing something here. He hasn't taken anything off the table, so nobody should think that or imply that. It's just a situation where government, in order for them to make their full determination, needs information on the impacts that it could create to both companies.
Okay.
And I've said it before, I don't think anybody in Burgeo would want to see the jobs created here on the backs of people in Dildo. I mean, they've been involved in that industry, in that community for 40, 50 years. And I don't think anybody would appreciate the fact where it would force Carino to, let's say, close down in Dildo just for the sake of creating a few jobs here in Burgeo. I mean, at the end of the day, what do we accomplish? We accomplish nothing in relationship to the whole industry other than making one community suffer for the sake of us. And, people might say, well, we've suffered long enough, so let somebody else suffer. But I mean, in reality, is that really the way you really want to do things, right? So, it's, again, we go back to the overall picture of community development and whatnot. It's a slow process. But from my perspective, it's always positive when things are moving forward and nobody's turning around saying, sorry, everybody walked away and it's staying status quo.
So things are still ongoing and there's still things being worked on through the companies and whatever. Okay, so as long as it's ongoing, because I think most people, when they knew that the meeting was there, they were expecting or waiting for some big announcement saying, yes, we're doing, no, we're not, or we've had this problem or whatever. But it was very, I don't know if hush-hush is the word, but very quiet. And
well, when you're, I guess people have to realize that when you're, when government sits down with business, and obviously both companies are looking at their bottom line in terms of finances and how they operate. Obviously there's a certain amount of discretion and confidentiality that has to go along with that. And I'm sure at that meeting, having been involved in various different aspects, personally, when you get into some meetings, it becomes fairly confidential because there's things that go on the table that certainly you don't want to leave the room because it means, how a company does business and the things they do business and that kind of stuff. So certainly there's a lot of things that would not come out of those meetings just due to the confidentiality nature and the overall business aspects of each one. So it doesn't surprise me, it didn't surprise me. What I was really pleased with at the end of the day is knowing that they've gone back and asked for some more information. Obviously there must have been some good questions and some good dialogue for that sort of situation to transpire. It would have been different if all of a sudden we got word that, well, both industry people got up and walked out the table and never to want to look at each other no more. And then you say, well, where does this sit?
Where does this go?
Yeah.
Okay. Your annual meeting.
Yeah, at our last board meeting, we had a general discussion on the annual general meeting, election of officers, of course, for the Burgeo Diversification Development Board, with our financial statements being done for this previous year, and of course our constitution. We have now set the date of Friday, April the 19th, as the date for our annual meeting. We are inviting, of course, traditionally our mayor to speak and bring greetings. Our MHA, Minister of Justice, will be invited as well to bring greetings. And we're looking at trying to get the Minister for Industry, Trade and Rural Development, Beaton Tulloch, to be our guest speaker that night. So it should be hopefully a very informative and enlightening evening, I'll call it, I guess, because we're planning to put a lot of things on the table, things that the board has been involved in the last year and a half, because as you're well aware, we didn't have an annual meeting last year because we changed the Constitution to bring it basically in line with our fiscal years, because it seemed like when we had our annual meetings in November, we were actually passing a financial statement that actually completed December 31st of the previous year, and that was really not acceptable to wait 11 months to ratify something of that nature. And of course, it's a time now that in the next month or so we'll be going out. There's a number of members that will be finishing their term on the board this coming April, and we'll be advertising for people interested in putting their name forward for nomination to the board. This April, I think there's 4 or 5 positions that will be available, and certainly we're encouraging people in the community, to put their name forward and get involved. And I've always said it's one thing to sit on the outside and make judgments and determination of what somebody is doing or not doing, or I don't mean somebody, but the board as a whole. But certainly once they get involved, they find out what the processes are, and certainly we enjoy and want the input from people in the community. I mean, let's face it, at the end of the day, I mean, this is what this board was created for, was to try and work with the residents of this community and the community as a whole. So certainly we'll encourage people to come out and attend and find out what it's all about. We'll hopefully have Mr. Tulloch there, who hopefully will draw people as well to that event, and of course our MHA and Mayor, needless to say. And we'll have more information on that in the next month or two.
Okay, now you also have interesting topic here. The Georgian representative. Now, why would the BDDB be interested in a newspaper representative?
Well, I've been here over 2.5 years, and I guess part of my frustration came is that there's a lot of good things happening in Burgeo and along the southwest coast as a whole. I mean, the 4 communities here, and trying to touch base with people in Port Bass in relationship to Georgian or even the Western Star. It seems like the only time they want to call is when they get wind of something bad happening, and that kind of frustrates me. So I did talk to a number of people of, questioning why down along here we didn't have any representatives. And about a month ago, Florence Courtney gave me a call and noted that she is the new, editor for the Burgeo region as it relates to the Georgian. So I mentioned that to the board again at the last meeting. I said, this individual is there as a resource, just like any other resource, and we need to get things out of what's happening in the Burgeo area. Just let the general public and everybody know some of the positive stuff that are happening here, because we sit in our own little bubble sometimes and just continue on, but it doesn't hurt to be able to let people know that, hey, we're still a progressive and moving forward community that's got a lot to offer, not only to the residents of the community, but the province as a whole. Right. And if we don't get the word out there, then people make certain assumptions. Just an old adage, Burgeo, nothing happening down there. The fish branch goes, well, sorry to tell you, but there's this, and this, and you only scratch the surface, and they kind of look at you, so if you don't get the word out there and let people know the positive things that you're doing, it kind of leaves a very false impression. And it's even as simple as promoting our resources like sandbanks. I mean, here's an opportunity now, there's an individual there that's responsible, but that individual is only going to be as good as the people that actually feed stories and information, so it enables her to do the editorials. Right. And then send it up to get it put in the Georgian. So I certainly encourage people in the community to use that resource person. And of course, the more she's used, then the more she's employed as well. That's right. And that's another positive step forward. So I did put that out to the board and challenge them that if they had any ideas, it's just as simple as the ring committee. I mean, they're looking at a couple of things now. I mean, why not get that into Georgia and let people know, that there is a rink here and there is a rink committee, and there is a complex group there that takes care of the community hall, softball field, and that kind of stuff. And just as simple as that, and even promoting sandbanks. I mean, I've always said it's the best kept secret in the province. If people knew it was here, we'd never be able to accommodate them all. But we got to get the word out. It's one thing for us to know about it. It's another thing to get it out to the public.
Anyway, is there anything else?
No, I think that covers everything pretty well that we discussed at our last meeting.
Okay, well, we certainly thank you for joining us.
And thanks for having me here again.
You're most welcome. During the Christmas break, Llewellyn Bellard stopped by our office with a collection of videos he has taken over the years. He was kind enough to let us borrow them. Here's one of these videos now. We hope you enjoy it.
When the little boats go out to sea from the shores of Newfoundland, God do me a favor, guide them with your hand, protect them from the dangers and the fury of the sea, 'cause the little boats of Newfoundland mean the world to me. My mama told me stories when I was just a little boy about the little boats of Newfoundland that sometimes made me cry. She'd tell me of the hardships and the dangers of the seas that will remain until the day I die in my memory. Brave men, she said, is what they are, those who face the icy wind, knowing as they leave the sheltered coves, they may never come back again. And then, as the teardrops filled my eyes, she'd hold my tiny hand and say, sight. The proudest thing on earth are those little boats of Newfoundland. When the little boats go out to sea from the shores of Newfoundland, God, do me a favor, guide them with your hand. Protect them from the dangers and the fury of the sea. 'Cause the little boats of Newfoundland mean the world to me. Yes, those little boats of Newfoundland mean the world to me.
Stay with us for Off the Rack, the community events, and the BBS Playbill, all after this.
Physical activity! Get it right! Physical activity! Get it right! Physical activity! Get it right!
Attention, attention. It's time for some action. At school or at home, hey, you got to be moving. Attention, attention, it's time for some action. At school or at home, hey, you've got to be moving. Sports are here to keep you in shape, and enjoying good health is not harder than playing. A little fresh air, healthy way of eating. These are the keys to exploring the horizons. If you ask me, well, physical activity let you go through a whole school day easily. Be part of it, do something for your body. Go outside, let your lungs have a party. Healthy body brings out the healthy spirit. Physical activity, can't live without it.
Off the Rack. This week as we scanned our tape rack, we came across a tape of some caribou on the Burgeo Road. Let's look back to February the 11th, 1996. Good evening and welcome to the community event segment of tonight's broadcast. I'm Jennifer Marks. The winner of the Brunettes TV Bingo was Albert Allen Han. Congratulations, Albert. The Burgeo Lioness have the next scheduled TV Bingo for Wednesday, February 6th. There will be one game for $300. Cards are $1 each or $6 for $5 and are available from any member of the Lioness and are in most stores around town. Please support the Lioness and play TV Bingo, and you could be the next winner of $300. The deadline to order a Valentine balloon from the Gaudy movement is Friday, February 8th. They only cost $1 each. Balloons make a great Valentine's Day surprise for someone special in your life. Order your balloon today. The Grand Search and Rescue Team and the Burgeo Lioness Club will be hosting a skidoo ride again this year. The trip will take place on February 23rd or 24th to Grand Brit
depending on the weather. If the weather is not suitable, then it will take place the following weekend. Sponsor sheets are now available from the Ground Search and Rescue Building on Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. If you do not wish to get sponsors, you can pay a registration fee of $15. There are great prizes to be won, including a prize for the sponsors. The Burgeo Public Library are selling tickets on the Valentine's package, which includes dinner for two at Gillette's Motel, served with wine and dessert. You will also receive flowers and candy to share with your sweetheart. Tickets cost $1 each or 3 for $2 and are available from the library, Sears, and children involved with the library story hour. The draw date is Thursday, February 14th. If your group or organization has an upcoming event planned, we will be happy to advertise it for you. Just call the BBS office by Wednesdays of each week to have items included in this portion of our broadcast. That concludes the community event segment of tonight's broadcast. See you next week.
BBS Playbill. Tune in on Tuesday for a rebroadcast of Pansy's Garden. Try your luck on Wednesday by playing Lioness TV Bingo. Tune in on Thursday when we'll have a rebroadcast of The Bandwagon. Join Pansy and the gang for 2 stories, a craft, and lots of fun on Saturday morning at 11 a.m. on Pansy's Garden. Next Sunday at 6:30 p.m. we will have religious revelations from the Anglican Church. And I'll be here again next week with This Week in Review. Please stay tuned now for The Bandwagon. For This Week in Review, I'm Marie Rose. Good night and God bless.